Shalom and welcome back to the Cepher Daily Readings. Thank you for stopping by to follow along. I am Trish. It is Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. I pray this is a restful day for you, and may this reading be a blessing, and may it glorify our Father. All praise and glory to Yahuwah Most High, in the name of the Son, Yahawashah Yahusha HaMashiach. We are in Enoch, Chanoch, chapter 82. Now, my son, Methuselah, all these things I speak unto you, and write for you. To you I have revealed all, and have given you Cepher Reading of everything. Preserve, my son, Methuselah, the Cepher Reading written by your father, that you may reveal them to future generations. Wisdom have I given you, to your children and your posterity, that they may reveal to their children for generations forever. This wisdom in their thoughts, and that those who comprehend may not slumber, but hear with their ears, that they may learn this wisdom and be deemed worthy of eating wholesome food. Blessed are all the righteous, blessed are all who walk in righteousness, in whom is no crime, as in sinners, when all their days are numbered. With respect to the progress of the sun in heaven, it enters and goes out of gate for 30 days. With the leaders of the 1,000 classes of the stars, with 4 which are added, and appertain to the 4 quarters of the year, which conduct them, and accompany them at 4 periods. Respecting these, men greatly err, and do not calculate them in the calculation of every age, for they greatly err respecting them. Nor do men know accurately that they are in the calculation of the year. But, indeed, these are marked down forever, 1 in the 1st gate, 1 in the 3rd, 1 in the 4th, and 1 in the 6th, so that the year is completed in 364 days. Truly has been stated and accurately has been calculated that which is marked down for the luminaries, the months, the fixed periods, the years, and the days. Uriel has explained to me and communicated to me, whom Yahuwah of all creation on my account commanded, according to the might of heaven and the power which it possesses, both by night and by day, to explain light to man, of the sun, moon, and stars, and of all the powers of heaven, which are turned with their respective orbs. This is the ordinance of the stars, which set in their places, in their seasons, in their periods, in their days, and in their months. These are the names of those who conduct them, who watch and enter in their seasons, according to their ordinance, in their periods, in their months, in their influence, and in their stations. 4 conductors of them first enter, who separate the 4 quarters of the year. After these, 12 conductors of their classes, who separate the months and the year, 364, with the leaders of 1,000, who distinguish between the days, as well as between the 4 additional ones, which conductors divide the 4 quarters of the year. These leaders of 1,000 are in the midst of the conductors, and the conductors are added each behind his station, and their conductors make the separation. These are the names of the conductors, who separates the 4 quarters of the year, who are appointed: Melch-el, Helamelech, Melial, and Nar-el. And the names of those who conduct them are Adnar-el, Iyasus-al, and Elialum-al. These are the 3 who follow after the conductors of the classes, each following after the 3 conductors of the classes, which themselves follow after those conductors of the stations, who divide the 4 quarters of the year. In the first part of the year rises and rules Melchas, who is named Tamani, and Zai. All the days of his influence which he rules are 91 days. And these are the signs of the days which are seen upon the earth. In the days of his influence, perspiration, heat, and trouble. All the trees become fruitful. The leaf of every tree comes forth. The grain is reaped. The rose and every species of flowers blossoms in the field, and the trees of winter are dried up. These are the names of the conductors who are under them: Bark-el, Sel-Sabel, and another additional conductor of 1,000 is named Helioaleph. The days of those influenced have been completed. The other conductor next after them is Helamelech, whose name they call the splendid Zai. All the days of his light are 91 days. These are the signs of the days upon earth: heat and drought, while the trees bring forth their fruits, warmed and concocted, and give their fruits to dry. The flocks follow, mate and bear young. All the fruits of the earth are collected, with everything in the fields, and the vines are trodden. This takes place during the time of his influence. These are their names and orders, and the conductors who are under them, of those who are chiefs of 1,000: Gedayael, Keel, and Heel. And the name of the additional leader of 1,000 is Asphael. The days of his influence have been completed. Chapter 83. And now I have shown you, my son Methuselah, every sight which I saw prior to your birth. I will relate another vision, which I saw before I was married. They resemble each other. The first was when I was learning a Cepher, and the other before I was married to your mother. I saw a potent vision, and on account of these things besought Yahuwah. I was lying down in the house of my grandfather Malalel. I saw in a vision heaven thrown down and removed. And when it fell upon the earth, I saw likewise the earth absorbed by a great abyss, and mountains suspended over mountains. Hills were sinking upon hills. Lofty trees were gliding off from their trunks, and were in the act of being projected, and of sinking into the abyss. And at these things the world fell down in my mouth. I cried out and said, the earth is destroyed. Then my grandfather Malalel raised me up and said to me, why do you thus cry out, my son? And wherefore thus do you lament? I related to him the whole vision which I had seen. He said to me, confirmed is that which you have seen, my son, and potent the vision of your dream respecting every secret sin of the earth. Its substance shall sink into the abyss, and a great destruction take place. Now, my son, rise up and beseech Yahuwah of glory, for you are faithful, that a remnant may be left upon earth, and that he would not wholly destroy it. My son, all this calamity upon earth comes down from heaven. Upon earth shall there be a great destruction. Then I arose, prayed, and entreated, and wrote down my prayer for the generations of the world, explaining everything to my son Methuselah. When I went down below and looking up to heaven, beheld the sun proceeding from the east, the moon descending to the west, a few stars, and everything which Elohim has shown from the beginning. I blessed Yahuwah of judgment and magnified him, because he has sent forth the sun from the windows of the east, that, ascending and rising in the face of heaven, it might spring up and pursue the path which has been pointed out to it. Chapter 84. I lifted up my hands in righteousness and blessed the Holy and the Great One. I spoke with the breath of my mouth and with a tongue of flesh, which Elohim has formed for all the sons of mortal men, that with it they may speak, giving them breath, a mouth, and a tongue to converse with. Blessed are you, O Yahuwah, the King, great and powerful in your greatness, Yahuwah of all creatures of heaven, King of kings, Elohim of the whole world, whose reign, whose kingdom, and whose majesty endure forever and ever. From generation to generation shall your dominion exist. All the heavens are your throne forever, and all the earth your footstool forever and ever. For you have made them, and over all you reign. No act whatsoever exceeds your power. With your wisdom is unchangeable, nor from your throne and from your presence is it ever averted. You know all things, see and hear them. nor is anything concealed from you, for you perceive all things. The angels of your heavens have transgressed, and on mortal flesh shall your wrath remain, until the day of the great judgment. Now then, O Elohim, Yahuwah and mighty King, I entreat you and beseech you to grant my prayer, that a posterity may be left to me on earth, and that all of mankind may not perish, that the earth may not be left destitute, and destruction take place forever. O Adonai, let the race perish from off the earth which has offended you, but a righteous and upright race establish for the plant of a seed forever. Hide not your face, O Yahuwah, from the prayer of your servant. Chapter 85. After this I had another dream, and explained it all to you, my son. Chanoch arose and said to his son Methuselah, To you, my son, will I speak. Hear my word, and incline your ear to the visionary dream of your father. Before I married your mother, Edna, I saw a vision on my bed, and behold, a cow sprang forth from the earth, and this cow was white. Afterwards a female calf sprung forth, and with it 2 other calves. The one was black, and the one was red. The black calf then struck the red one, and pursued it over the earth. From that period I could see nothing more of the red calf, but the black one increased in bulk, and a female heifer came with him. After this I saw that many cattle proceeded forth, resembling him and following after him. The first female young one also went out in the presence of the first cow, and sought the red calf, but found him not. And she lamented with a great lamentation while she was seeking him. Then I looked until that first cow came to her, from which time she became silent and ceased to lament. Afterwards she calved another white cow, and again calved many cows and black heifers. In my sleep also I perceived a white bull, which in like manner grew, and became a large white bull. After him many white cows came forth, resembling him, and they began to calve many white cows, which resembled them and followed each other. Chapter 86. Again I looked attentively while sleeping, and surveyed heaven above, and behold, a single star fell from heaven, which being raised up, ate and fed among those cows. After that I perceived other large and black cows, and behold, all of them changed their stalls and pastures, while their young began to lament one with another. Again I looked in my vision, and surveyed heaven, when behold, I saw many stars, which descended and projected themselves from heaven to where was the first star, into the midst of those young ones, while the cows were with them, feeding in the midst of them. I looked and observed them, when behold, they all acted after the manner of horses, and began to approach the young cows, all of whom became pregnant, and brought forth elephants, camels, and asses. At these all the cows were alarmed and terrified, when they began biting with their teeth, swallowing and striking with their horns. They began also to devour the cows, and behold, all the children of the earth trembled, shook with terror at them, and suddenly fled away. Chapter 87. Again I perceived them when they began to strike and to swallow each other, and the earth cried out. Then I raised my eyes a second time towards heaven, and saw in a vision that, behold, there came forth from heaven as it were the likeness of white men. One came forth from thence, and 3 with him. Those 3 who came forth last seized me by my hand, and raising me up from the generations of the earth, elevated me to a high station. Then they showed me a lofty tower on the earth, while every hill became diminished, and they said, Remain here until you perceive what shall come upon those elephants, camels, and asses, upon the stars, and upon all the cows. Chapter 88. Then I looked at that one of the 4, who came forth first. He seized the first star which fell down from heaven, and, binding it hand and foot, he cast it into a valley narrow, deep, stupendous, and gloomy. Then one of them drew his sword and gave it to the elephants, camels, and asses, who began to strike each other. And the whole earth shook on account of them. And when I looked in the vision, behold, one of those 4 angels who came forth, hurled from heaven, collected together and took all the great stars, whose form partly resembles that of horses, and binding them all hand and foot, cast them into the cavities of the earth. Chapter 89. Then one of those 4 went to the white cows and taught them a mystery. While the cow was trembling, it was born and became a man, and fabricated for himself a large ship. In this he dwelt, and 3 cows dwelt with him in that ship, which covered them. Again I lifted up my eyes towards heaven, and saw a lofty roof. Above it were 7 cataracts, which poured forth on a certain village much water. Again I looked, and behold, there were fountains open on the earth in that large village. The water began to boil up and rose over the earth, so that the village was not seen, while its whole soil was covered with water. Much water was over it, darkness and clouds. Then I surveyed the height of this water, and it was elevated above the village. It flowed over the village and stood higher than the earth. Then all the cows which were collected there, while I looked on them, were drowned, swallowed up, and destroyed in the water. But the ship floated above it. All the cows, the elephants, the camels, and the asses were drowned on the earth, and all cattle. Nor could I perceive them. Neither were they able to get out, but perished, and sunk into the deep. Again I looked in the vision until those cataracts from that lofty roof were removed, and the fountains of the earth became equalized, while other depths were opened, into which the water began to descend, until the dry ground appeared. The ship remained on the earth, the darkness receded, and it became light. Then the white cow, which became a man, went out of the ship, and the 3 cows with him. One of the 3 cows was white, resembling that cow. One of them was red as blood, and one of them was black. And the white cow left them. Then began wild beasts and birds to bring forth. Of all these different kinds assembled together, lions, tigers, wolves, dogs, wild boars, foxes, rabbits, and the Hanzar, the Sisset, the Avest, kites, the Fonkas, and ravens. Then the white cow was born in the midst of them, and they began to bite each other, when the white cow, which was born in the midst of them, brought forth a wild ass and a white cow at the same time, and many wild asses. Then the white cow which was born brought forth a black wild sow, and a white sheep. That wild sow also brought forth many swine. And that sheep brought forth 12 sheep. When those 12 sheep grew up, they delivered one of them to the asses. Again, those asses delivered that sheep to the wolves, and he grew up in the midst of them. Then Yahuwah brought the 11 sheep, that they might dwell and feed with him in the midst of the wolves. They multiplied, and there was abundance of pasture for them. But the wolves began to frighten and oppress them, while they destroyed their young ones, and they left their young in torments of deep water. Now the sheep began to cry out on account of their young, and fled for refuge to their Adonai. One, however, which was saved, escaped, and went away to the wild asses. I beheld the sheep moaning, crying, and petitioning their Adonai with all their might, until Yahuwah of the sheep descended at their voice from lofty habitation, went to them, and inspected them. He called to that sheep which had secretly stolen away from the wolves, and told him to make the wolves understand that they were not to touch the sheep. Then that sheep went to the wolves with the word of Yahuwah, when another met him, and proceeded with him. Both of them together entered the dwelling of the wolves, and conversing with them made them understand that henceforward they were not to touch the sheep. Afterwards I perceived the wolves greatly prevailing over the sheep with their whole force. The sheep cried out, and their Adonai came to them. He began to strike the wolves, who commenced a grievous lamentation, but the sheep were silent, nor from that time did they cry out. I then looked at them until they departed from the wolves. The eyes of the wolves were blind, who went out and followed them with all their might. But Adonai the sheep proceeded with them and conducted them. All his sheep followed him. His countenance terrific and splendid, and glorious was his aspect. Yet the wolves began to follow the sheep until they overtook them in a certain lake of water. Then that lake became divided, the water standing up on both sides before their face. And while their Adonai was conducting them, he placed himself between them and the wolves. The wolves, however, perceived not the sheep, but went into the midst of the lake, following them, and running after them into the lake of the water. But when they saw the Adonai of the sheep, they turned to fly from before his face. Then the water of the lake returned, and that suddenly, according to its nature, it became full and was raised up until it covered the wolves. And I saw that all of them which had followed the sheep perished and were drowned. But the sheep passed over this water, proceeding to a wilderness, which was without both water and grass. And they began to open their eyes and to see. Then I beheld Adonai of the sheep inspecting them and giving them water and grass. The sheep was proceeding and conducting them. And when he had ascended to the top of the lofty rock, Adonai of the sheep sent him to them. Afterwards I perceived their Adonai standing before them, with an aspect terrific and severe. And when they all beheld him, they were frightened at his countenance. All of them were alarmed and trembled. They cried out after that sheep, and to the other sheep who had been with him, and who was in the midst of them, saying, We are not able to stand before our Adonai, or to look upon him. Then that sheep who conducted them went away and descended the top of the rock. When the sheep began to grow blind and to wander from the path which he had shown them, but he knew it not. Their Adonai, however, was moved with great indignation against them, and when that sheep had learned, he descended from the top of the rock, and coming to them, found that there were many, which had become blind, and had wandered from his path. As soon as they beheld him, they feared and trembled at his presence, and became desirous of returning to their fold. Then that sheep, taking with him other sheep, went to those which had wandered, and afterwards began to kill them. They were terrified at his countenance. Then he caused those which had wandered to return, who went back to their fold. I likewise saw there in the vision that this sheep became a man, built a house for Adonai of the sheep, and made them all stand in the house. I perceived also that the sheep which proceeded to meet this sheep, their conductor, died. I saw too that all the great sheep perished, while smaller ones rose up in their place, entered a pasture, and approached a river of water. Then that sheep, their conductor, who became a man, was separated from them and died. All the sheep sought after him and cried for him with bitter lamentation. I saw likewise that they ceased to cry after that sheep and passed over the river of water, and that there arose other sheep, all of whom conducted them, instead of those who were dead and who had conducted them. Then I saw that the sheep entered a goodly place, and a territory delectable and glorious. I saw also that they became satiated, that their house was in the midst of a delectable territory, and that sometimes their eyes were opened, and that sometimes they were blind, until another sheep arose and conducted them. He brought them all back, and their eyes were opened. Then dogs, foxes, and wild boars began to devour them, until again another sheep arose, the Adonai of the flock, one of themselves, a ram to conduct them. This ram began to butt on every side of those dogs, foxes, and wild boars, until they all perished. With his eyes he saw the ram in the midst of them, who had laid aside his glory. And he began to strike the sheep, treading upon them, and behaving himself without dignity. Then their Adonai sent a sheep to a still different sheep, and raised him up to be a ram, and to conduct them instead of that sheep who had laid aside his glory. Going therefore to him, and conversing with him alone, he raised up that ram and made him a prince and leader of the flock, all the time that the dogs troubled the sheep. The first ram paid respect to this latter ram. Then the latter ram arose and fled away from before his face. And I saw that those dogs caused the first ram to fall. But the latter ram arose and conducted the smaller sheep. That ram likewise begat many sheep and died. Then there was a smaller sheep, a ram, instead of him, which became a prince and leader, conducting the flock. And the sheep increased in size and multiplied. And all the dogs, foxes, and wild boars feared and fled away from him. That ram also struck and killed all the wild beasts, so that they could not again prevail in the midst of the sheep, nor at any time ever snatch them away. And that house was made large and wide, a lofty tower being built upon it by the sheep, for Yahuwah of the sheep. The house was low, but the tower was elevated and very high. Then Yahuwah of the sheep stood upon that tower and caused a full table to approach before him. Again, I saw that those sheep wandered and went various ways, forsaking that their house, and that their Adonai called to some among them, whom he sent to them. But these the sheep began to kill, and when one of them was saved from slaughter, he leaped and cried out against those who were desirous of killing him. But Yahuwah of the sheep delivered him from their hands, and made him ascend to him, and remain with him. He sent also many others to them to testify, and with lamentations to exclaim against them. Again I saw, when some of them forsook the house of their Adonai and his tower, wandering on all sides and growing blind, I saw that Yahuwah of the sheep made a great slaughter among them in their pasture, until they cried out to him in consequence of that slaughter. Then he departed from the place of his habitation, and left them in the power of lions, tigers, wolves, and the hyenas, and in the power of foxes, and of every beast. And the wild beasts began to tear them. I saw too that he forsook the house of their fathers, and their tower, giving them all into the power of lions to tear and devour them, into the power of every beast. Then I began to cry out with all my might, imploring Yahuwah of the sheep, and showing him how the sheep were devoured by all the beasts of prey. But he looked on in silence, rejoicing that they were devoured, swallowed up, and carried off, and leaving them in the power of every beast for food. He called also 70 shepherds, and resigned to them the sheep, that they might overlook them, saying to them and to their associates, Every one of you henceforward overlook the sheep, and whatsoever I command you, do, and I will deliver them to you numbered. I will tell you which of them shall be slain. These destroy. And he delivered the sheep to them. Then he called to another and said, Understand, and watch every which the shepherds shall do to these sheep. For many more of them shall perish than I have commanded. Of every excess and slaughter which the shepherds shall commit, there shall be an account, as how many may have perished by my command, and how many they may have destroyed of their own heads. Of all the destruction by each of the shepherds there shall be an account, and according to the number I will cause a recital to be made before me. How many they have destroyed of their own heads, and how many they have delivered up to destruction, that I may have this testimony against them, that I may know all their proceedings, and that, delivering to them, I may see what they will do, whether they will act as I have commanded them or not. However, they shall be ignorant, neither shall you make any explanation to them, neither shall you reprove them, but there shall be an account of all the destruction done by them in their respective seasons. Then they began to kill and destroy more than it had been commanded of them. And they left the sheep in the power of the lions, so that very many of them were devoured and swallowed up by lions and tigers, and wild boars preyed upon them. That tower they burnt and overthrew that house. Then I grieved extremely on account of the tower, and because the house of the sheep was overthrown. Neither was I afterwards able to perceive whether they again entered that house. The shepherds likewise and their associates delivered them to all the wild beasts, that they might devour them. Each of them in his season, according to his number, was delivered up. Each of them, one with another, was described in a Cepher. How many of them, one with another, were destroyed in a Cepher? More, however, than was ordered, everyone killed and destroyed. Then I began to weep, and was greatly indignant on account of the sheep. In like manner also I saw in the vision him who wrote, how he wrote down one, destroyed by the shepherds every day. He ascended, remained, and exhibited each of his Cepherim to Yahuwah of the sheep, all which they had done, and all which each of them had made away with, and all which they had delivered up to destruction. He took the Cepher up in his hands, read it, sealed it, and deposited it. After this I saw shepherds overlooking for 12 hours, and behold, 3 of the sheep departed, arrived, went in, and began building all which was fallen down of that house. But the wild boars hindered them, although they prevailed not. Again they began to build as before, and raised up that tower, which was called a lofty tower. And again they began to place before the tower a table, with every impure and unclean kind of bread upon it. Moreover, also all the sheep were blind, and could not see, as were the shepherds likewise. Thus they were delivered up to the shepherds for a great destruction, who trod them under foot, and devoured them. Yet was their Adonai silent until all the sheep in the field were destroyed. The shepherds and the sheep were all mixed together, but they did not save them from the power of the beasts. Then he who wrote the Cepher ascended, exhibited it, and read it at the residence of Yahuwah of the sheep. He petitioned him for them. He petitioned him for them, and prayed, pointing out every act of the shepherds, and testifying before him against them all. Then, taking the Cepher, he deposited it with him and departed. Chapter 90. And I observed during the time that thus 37 shepherds were overlooking, all of whom finished in their respective periods as the first. Others then received them into their hands, that they might overlook them in their respective periods, every shepherd in his own period. Afterwards I saw in the vision that all the birds of heaven arrived, eagles, the avest, kites, and ravens. The eagle instructed them all. They began to devour the sheep, to peck out their eyes, and to eat up their bodies. The sheep then cried out, for their bodies were devoured by the birds. I also cried out and groaned in my sleep against the shepherd which overlooked the flock. And I looked while the sheep were eaten up by the dogs, by the eagles, and by the kites. They neither left them their body, nor their skin, nor their muscles, until their bones alone remained, until their bones fell upon the ground, and the sheep became diminished. I observed likewise during the time that 23 shepherds were overlooking, who completed in their respective periods 58 periods. Then were small lambs, born of those white sheep, who began to open their eyes and to see, crying out to the sheep. The sheep, however, cried not out to them, neither did they hear what they uttered to them, but they were deaf, blind, and obdurate in the greatest degrees. I saw in the vision that ravens flew down upon those lambs, that they seized one of them, and that tearing the sheep in pieces they devoured them. I saw also that the horns grew upon those lambs, that the ravens lighted down upon their horns. I saw too that a large horn sprouted out on an animal among the sheep, and that their eyes were opened. He looked at them, their eyes were wide open, and he cried out to them. Then the Debela saw him, all of whom ran to him. And besides this, all the eagles, the avest, the ravens, and the kites were still carrying off the sheep, flying down upon them and devouring them. The sheep were silent, but the Debela lamented and cried out. Then the ravens contended and struggled with them. They wished among them to break his horn, but they prevailed not over him. I looked at them until the shepherds, the eagles, the avest, and the kites came, who cried out to the ravens to break the horn of the Debela, to contend with him and to kill him. But he struggled with them and cried out that help might come to him. Then I perceived that the man came who had written down the names of the shepherds, and who ascended up before Yahuwah of the sheep. He brought assistance and caused everyone to see him descending to the help of the Debela. I perceived likewise that Yahuwah of the sheep came to them in wrath, while all those who saw him fled away. All fell down in his tabernacle before his face, while all the eagles, the avest, ravens, and kites assembled, and brought with them all the sheep of the field. All came together and strove to break the horn of the Debela. Then I saw that the man who wrote the Cepher at the word of Yahuwah opened the Cepher of destruction, of that destruction which the last 12 shepherds wrought, and pointed out before Yahuwah of the sheep that they destroyed more than those who preceded them. I saw also that Yahuwah of the sheep came to them, and taking in his hand the scepter of his wrath, seized the earth, which became rent asunder, while all the beasts and birds of heaven fell from the sheep, and sunk into the earth, which closed over them. I saw too that a large sword was given to the sheep, who went forth against all the beasts of the field to slay them. But all the beasts and birds of heaven fled away from before their face. And I saw a throne erected in a delectable land. Upon this sat Yahuwah of the sheep, who received all the sealed Cepherim, which were opened before him. Then Yahuwah called the first 7 white ones, and commanded them to bring before him the first of the first stars, which preceded the stars, whose form partly resembled that of horses, the first star which fell down first. And they brought them all before him. And he spoke to the man who wrote in his presence, who was one of the 7 white ones, saying, Take those 70 shepherds, to whom I delivered up the sheep, and receiving them, killed more of them than I commanded. Behold, I saw them all bound, and standing before him. First came the trial of the stars, which, being judged and found guilty, went to the place of punishment. They thrust them into the deep, full of flaming fire, and full of pillars of fire. Then the 70 shepherds were judged, and being found guilty, were thrust into the flaming abyss. At that time likewise I perceived that one abyss was thus opened in the midst of the earth, which was full of fire. And to this were brought the blind sheep, which being judged and found guilty were all thrust into that abyss of fire on the earth and burnt. The abyss was on the right of that house, and I saw the sheep burning, and their bones consuming. I stood beholding him immersed that ancient house, while they brought out its pillars, every plant in it, and the ivory enfolding it. They brought it out and deposited it in a place on the right side of the earth. I also saw that Yahuwah of the sheep produced a new house, great and loftier than the former, which he bound by the former circular spot. All its pillars were new, and its ivory new, as well as more abundant than the former ancient, which he had brought out. And while all the sheep which were left were in the midst of it, all the beasts of the earth and all the birds of heaven fell down and worshipped them, petitioning them and obeying them in everything. Then those three who were clothed in white, and who, holding me by my hand, had before caused me to ascend, while the hand of him who spoke held me, raised me up and placed me in the midst of the sheep, before the judgment took place. The sheep were all white, with wool long and pure. Then all who had perished and had been destroyed, every beast of the field and every bird of heaven, assembled in that house, while Yahuwah of that sheep rejoiced with great joy, because all were good, and had come back again to his dwelling. And I saw that they laid down the sword which had been given to the sheep, and returned it to his house, sealing it up in the presence of Yahuwah. All the sheep would have been enclosed in that house, had it been capable of containing them, and the eyes of all were open, gazing on the good one, nor was there one among them who did not behold him. I likewise perceived that the house was large, wide, and extremely full. I saw, too, that a white cow was born, whose horns were great, and that all the beasts of the field and all the birds of heaven were alarmed at him, and entreated him at all times. Then I saw the nature of all of them was changed, and that they became white cows, and that the first in the midst of them spoke, when that word was a wild ox. Upon the head of that wild ox were great and black horns, while Yahuwah of the sheep rejoiced over them and over all the cows. I lay down in the midst of them. I awoke and saw the whole. This is the vision which I saw, lying down and waking. Then I blessed Yahuwah of righteousness and gave glory to him. Afterwards I wept abundantly, nor did my tears cease, so that I became incapable of enduring it. While I was looking on, they flowed on account of what I saw, for all had come and gone by. Every individual circumstance respecting the conduct of mankind was seen by me. In that night I remembered my former dream, and therefore wept and was troubled, because I had seen that vision. The end of chapter 90. Psalms, Tehilliym, chapter 62. To the chief musician, to Yeduthan, a Mizmor of David. Truly my soul awaits upon Elohim. From him comes my deliverance. He only is my rock and my deliverance. He is my defense. I shall not be greatly moved. How long will you imagine mischief against a man? You shall be slain, all of you. As a bowing wall shall you be, and as a tottering fence. They only consult to cast him down from his excellency. They delight in his lies. They bless with their mouth, but they curse inwardly. Selah. My soul, wait you only upon Elohim, for my expectation is from him. He only is my rock and my deliverance. He is my defense. I shall not be moved. And Elohim is my deliverance and my glory. The rock of my strength and my refuge is in Elohim. Trust in him at all times, you people. Pour out your heart before him. Elohim is a refuge for us. Selah. Surely men of low degree are vanity, and men of high degree are a lie. To be laid in the balance, they are altogether lighter than vanity. Trust not in oppression, and become not vain in robbery. If riches increase, set not your heart upon them. Elohim has spoken once. Twice have I heard this. That power belongs unto Elohim. Also unto you, O Adonai, belong mercy, for you render to every man according to his work. Yes, Yahuwah is my rock. The Son, Yahawashah, Yahusha, is my rock. All praise and glory to him, to the Father, Yahuwah, and thank you to Yahusha, Yahawashai, for willingly giving his life, for suffering unimaginably, for conquering death and rising on the third day, for my sins, for your sins, for that, so that we can be saved and be redeemed. He is the way to the Father. He is the light. Thank you, Yahawashai. And I thank the Father for this day, for this Shabbat. It is mercy that he shows me every day that I'm allowed to get out of bed. And every day and every night that I can lay my head down. So I pray this was a blessing to you. Thank you so much for following along. And we are going to start the new week in a few hours. So thank you again. And Yah willing, I will see you tomorrow. Shalom.